Good evening. It's Monday, December 18th, 2023. Welcome to episode 43 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Joining me tonight is Brian and Susan Dudley with SB Homestead Radios. Welcome, you guys. Thanks for joining me.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, we actually got a chance to pass each other down in Kentucky a few months back at the Kentucky Sustainable Living Festival. And I thought I would bring Brian and Susan back on tonight to talk a little bit about preparedness and emergency communications. And I think this is a particularly relevant and timely topic, given that there was some major tornadic activity that just swept through the state about a week or so ago, causing some pretty widespread loss of power. There was loss of communication, and unfortunately, there was some loss of life. So I'm interested to know what your level of response and groups like your HAM group have as it relates to integrating into that. But first, if you will, why don't you tell folks who you are and what you do?
Okay.
Well, I'm Susan. I'm the S part of SB Homestead Radios.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a special education teacher for many years, and I got interested in radio because of Brian.
Okay.
And of course, I'm the B in S&B, and I own a specialty construction company here in North Mississippi, and got into ham radio because I want to know what's going on. You can't always get good information from this, because if it doesn't work, you've got to have another way to find out what's going on. Cell towers are down for whatever reason, if they just get overloaded, or a storm comes through and knocks the cell towers down like we've had in the past. Radio is a great way to get additional information.
Yeah, I think that's really shouldn't be understated, because there's really a lot of reasons why communications might be disrupted. One very common reason is natural disasters, of course, and whether a hurricane or a tornado, or in like my area, I get wildfires through here occasionally, and when that happens and it affects a community on large scale, you're going to have loss of communications. And what kind of response do you guys have, or protocols do you follow when something like that comes through your area? How do you guys within your ham organizations, how do you coordinate?
Well, we of course have groups out there. We have ARIES and RACIES, which are groups strictly dedicated to that. But so far as the individual teams and the individual ham clubs get together, we all have a PACE plan. And a PACE plan is a readiness plan for emergencies, or you can develop a PACE plan for anything. And PACE stands for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. All right. So most of the time when weather is starting to come to us, our primary form of communication is we talk on the cell phone to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We say, hey, we've got a major storm coming through. If it gets bad, we'll activate the nets. And a net is where we'll get on the radio on a specific frequency and start relaying information to other individuals.
Those are often called Skywarn nets, and they'll activate for any bad weather.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys, how far in advance of this particular event were you guys starting to coordinate your efforts?
That morning, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We were finding out who was in town, who was around, and starting to track the path of the storms. And then that evening when it started up, I was in contact with people west of us in Oxford, because the storm was traveling from west to east.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in contact with them through 2-meter ham radio. Found out large damaging hail was headed this way. And then I was relaying that information east over to Alabama, because what passes through us passes over to Alabama as well. So I was relaying that information to them on what to expect. And then when it finally hit us, it had fizzled out for the most part.
Right.
And it did the same thing. It kind of split, and then when it split, it went north, and Tennessee's what got hit so hard.
Yeah, yeah, they had a pretty significant damage there in Tennessee, and I hadn't really known about this because it's not directly going to impact me geographically, but I wound up seeing some activity on social media, and then when I did, I kind of decided to look on the National Weather Service's, because I wanted to see where it was tracking to see if it would be coming through in any of the areas where I knew people were at, and yeah, it came surprisingly close. But turns out everybody was okay. But you covered the P, but let's go through the other portions of that acronym and talk about how they might, manifest themselves.
Well, alternate, and we still use the cell phone for alternate because we'll go to text messages, because a lot of times text message will get through when voice will not.
Mm-hmm.
But primarily, when the storm's coming through, we went to contingency right away, and that's radio for us. And
radio meaning what?
2-meter ham radio.
Okay.
And that was contingency on that. Now, we do have nearby local groups, like her brother lives a few hundred yards away from us on his property. He's got the land next to us. And he and I communicate on radio, on handheld radios, using GMRS frequency, General Mobile Radio Service. And General Mobile Radio Service is a test-free. You can go on FCC website and pay $35 and get a GMRS license. It's good for the entire family.
Right. Who would that be? Best serve, who would best benefit from using GMRS?
On the homestead, if you're out and about, our grandson has a radio that when he goes out on our property and is playing things, he's 9 years old. We have one, he has one, and he checks in with us, or we'll call him and say, "Hey, where you at?" He said, "Oh, I'm down by the lake," or "I'm over at the chicken pens."
Right.
And
so if you have a large piece of property, you're able to access the repeater system that exists in GMRS, correct?
Well, go ahead.
We don't really have a repeater system here in Mississippi for GMRS. There's a few around, but not near what you have out where you live.
Okay.
So we use just what will travel what's called line of sight. So it's more simplex. It doesn't go as far as the repeater does, but if you're on 40, 50 acres, you can talk to each other with no problem.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's a lot cheaper to replace that $25 Bofang radio than it is that $1,000 cell phone when you drop it in the lake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it falls off the tractor.
Or it falls off the tractor and you run it over, which I have done before. Yes.
So if somebody wanted to get that, if somebody was interested in GMRS, they say, "Hey, that sounds pretty cool." What would they have to do in order to get it?
The first step is you're required to be licensed, that $35 license fee, and then just purchase a radio. Most of the GMRS radios already come pre-programmed in their channels 1 through 22, set to specific frequencies, and you just make an agreement with the group you're talking with. Okay, we're going to be on channel 3, so everybody turns their radio to channel 3 so they can talk back and forth.
Right. And so that covers that license you said. Do you have to take a test? What do you have to do for it?
That's test free.
Test free.
You just pay a apply fee. And you do not have to take a test for it. Just pay the fee. And that license is good for the entire family.
And it's good for 10 years.
And it's good for 10 years.
Right. Yeah, that might be the way to go. Up in my area, they do have frequencies pretty well integrated into my geographical location. So I'm sure that other areas in the country may have frequencies that have repeater capability as well. So if a person was interested in that, you would just need to take and look into it to see what's in your area. But that's pretty cool because I could actually reach out I'm not going to go simplex 30 miles. I'm not going to
No.
go,
No.
it's you just not the wattage there on those simplex radios, and any obstructions, you're not going to be able to reach somebody. So you're going to need to reach out and send it to a repeater. But I could talk to 30 miles north of here on a GMRS frequency. So that's a very cool thing to have. And I think that a lot of people take communications completely for granted. Right.
Oh,
it's one of those things
definitely.
that we have so much of. We have so much social media. We have so much, news and information flowing on a daily basis. But when
And
that gets cut off, where do you go to get your information?
Well, like right now, I don't know if you're following the news, but the East Coast has hundreds of thousands of people without electricity right now because that storm that came up through Florida went
Mhm.
right up the East Coast, and it is pounding those guys up there in Maine and New Hampshire and Connecticut, and they are all without power. So
Yeah.
that means the radio stations are down, the TV stations are down, or they will be down as soon as their generators run out of fuel.
Right.
So
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
the radio is it, and if there are some radio stations, AM, FM radio stations, that right there
just
could be a valuable source of information.
Now, what's that you're holding up?
This is a Crane AM, FM shortwave radio.
it'll
Okay.
also pick up some single sideband and the aviation bands, and it's got the weather alerts.
Right. So it's got all the weather frequencies in it as well. Part of your communication pace plan for gathering information. A pace plan can be developed for many things, not just how to communicate with your family or the community, but it can also be developed for gathering information. Okay, you use an AM, FM radio. If you have a scanner, you can run the scanner as part of an alternate also and hear what police, fire, the power crews are doing out
Right.
there to gather that information as well. And because information is, if you have good information, that allows you to make an informed decision
Right.
on what you need to do.
So you covered the first three of that acronym. Let's go back to it. And what's the last one?
The last one is emergency.
Okay.
So Susan travels. She is she's retired, but she is out working again and has to travel about 3 hours away from the house. So our primary form of communication is the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Our alternate would be text message. Contingency is the radio that she has in her car.
Mm-hmm.
She has a ham radio in her car. She has the ham repeaters that are available. She knows which repeaters to hit that will get to me. And then the emergency on that is rally points for us. I know the route that she drives back and forth. I know when she leaves and about how long it takes her to get to different points or different stops on her route.
Mm-hmm.
So if something comes up, I know I can head that direction and where she will be meeting me.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. I think that's an area that I quite honestly could tighten up my game a little bit and be a little bit more in tune with, and just utilize, that format for maintaining communication and contact with your loved ones. Because again, it's really nice when somebody comes home every night or somebody is where you are expecting them. But what does the average person do that has never thought about that? If you've never thought about some of these contingencies, you've never thought about that at all, where do you go? You freak out. Do you dial 911? So I think it's really important to have certain things like that in place, because again, in the preparedness world, you can't prepare for it all, but there's certain things that are easily solvable and at least have, kind of war game things out. And I think it's just a very smart move to go down that road.
Right. One of the things that we we talk about to people with is, okay, on a sheet of paper, list the 5 most things that bother you the most, or
that you're most worried about.
That you're most worried about. And then go over there and list what is the most likely event to happen out of those 5 things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because everybody's worried about the economic collapse and societal unrest and all of this. And then on that list, you know, would be storms or something like that. But then when they go over there to the other side and list what's most likely going to happen, well, that's going to be a weather event.
In our area.
It could be tornado, ice storm. So that's what we have to prepare for,
right?
Realistically. And communications is part of that, because when we have ice storms down here, everything goes down. You know, we'll get 1 or 2 inches of ice on the power lines, and that shuts everything down until they can get the power lines back up. So your radio communications between your community, your family members, and the outside world becomes very important.
Yeah, man, it's just absolutely critical, because again, it is just one of those things that so many people just take for granted, because you're always able to pick up the phone, or you're always able to see somebody, to face-to-face communications. And when that's cut off, it's just a different level of panic. It's a different level of concern. And so by having that PACE plan in place, you know, it's gonna save you a lot of heartache and headache, because not only is you're both going to know what to do next, right? You're going to know the next step, and you're going to be like kind of in sync with each other, even though you're not in communication.
It's important to talk to each other and your other family members that are going to be a part of this. I mean, you've got to have that conversation, and sometimes that's going to change. I mean, so it's not always going to be the same. So you've got to keep, you know, bringing it back up every so often. Let's discuss this. Make sure we know what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely critical, but it's one of those things that's often overlooked.
You know, and there's many forms of communication. I mean, you got CB radio is still a viable source, still works well. You know, FRS, Family Radio Service, is a non-licensed service.
And that's the little walkie-talkies that you can buy at Walmart that has a fixed antenna on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, like we said, the GMRS radios, which are 5-watt radios on the handheld side, and up to 50 watts on a base station. So you could put one of those 50 watters in the house with an antenna up on the roof and really reach out and cover some ground on simplex, meaning radio to radio without having to go to a repeater. And then, of course, then you step up to the ham radio, which has 100 watts and up, depending on where you are in the ham bands.
Go ahead, Susan.
I was going to say, in our 2-meter radios around here, we have a lot of 2-meter repeaters. So then, of course, it carries further, because it will go down the line, like you were talking about your GMRS repeaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. You've given some good things to think about there, as far as alternatives to ham radio, being citizen band radio, CB. You've got your FRS radios, which are basically like your Walmart bubble pack radios, or you can actually, well, I don't want to get into that, but
yes, you can, but you're not supposed to.
With that. But and shortwave, and I actually in my preps, I have just a little AM/FM radio that has shortwave. Shortwave on it as well.
That's one I carry around.
That's what she carries with her as well.
Yeah, I probably should get something like that. That looks a little bit better than the one that I have. Mine's like just a little small, little transistor looking thing. It has shortwave on it, you know. And if I were to put,
I have one of those. I have one of those too, but this one works a whole lot better.
Yeah, I imagine it does. So I'll probably reach out to you maybe and see if you maybe can give me what that is, and I might want to add that to my preps, because again, you can never have too much in the way of communications. And
no, and this one you can actually clip an external antenna on it.
Yeah,
which really increases the range, the receive range on it.
Right. Yeah. So that's really good. It's funny well, not really funny, but it's just ironic that you had mentioned the power outage, because I was going to be mentioning a particular website that's out there. In fact, I put a link in the description of this broadcast if anybody wants to take a look at it, but it's called poweroutage.us.
Mm-hmm.
And you go on that and it will give you what is actually out. And I think they update it like every 15 or 20 minutes, it's being updated. And you can get a pretty good sense about what's happening around the country. It shows the entire United States, all 50 states. And when it gets to be above like 100,000 people out, then they change the color of the map. And so when I looked up into that northeast, I guess that's what, northeast or whatever up there in Maine.
Yes.
I mean, it's just lit up. Half of like their people are out of power up there in Maine. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I'm assuming that's not going to be something that's going to be very long lived. They will probably get power restored to those people. But what does happen when we get to that point where maybe something more significant happens and it's going to be more widespread? And who's to know when those services come back? So from that standpoint, it would stand to reason that people should have redundancies in their communication systems, and ham radio seems,
because like what you're talking about is, okay, I know my local areas without power.
mm-hmm.
Well, how far does that go? Okay. Is it 10 miles, 20 miles, 100 miles out? And that's where your communications plan comes into effect. And you can reach out further, cell phone's not working. Okay. So I go to my radio, go to my GMRS radio. Well, the GMRS repeater's not working, so I can't talk to anybody there. So you go to your ham radio and you reach out outside of the affected area and say, yeah, news is telling us that 200 miles from where you are, there's no power. And they're predicting that it may be out for 2 to 3 days. That's where your PACE communication plan comes into effect. And then once you find out that, oh, hey, we're going to be without power for several days, your power PACE plan comes into effect. What your primary source of electricity is the grid. Your alternate is your generator. Your contingency could be solar.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get into your emergency, well, then you're using solar generators or whatever that you
heating
have.
with wood or
Yes.
all your portable things that you may have, to try to make do. Yeah, that's great. And I think it really does translate to a lot of different areas. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it. So it's primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really simple, but and concise, really. I mean,
It is. And the key to it is keep it simple. Don't overthink the problem.
Yeah.
Because in a stress situation, simple is better.
Yeah. So that poweroutage.us that I had just mentioned, that's another place that people can go. You're not going to get the intelligence like you just said as far as the duration of that outage, but you're going to be able to see what affected areas around you might be impacted. Maybe you're impacted by a hurricane because you're on, the East Coast, or you're going to be in the Midwest and the South, and you have a big tornado thing come through. You may be able to go on that and just get some additional information aside from, the ham radio networks and other community ties that you have.
Well, that's if you have internet to get on there.
Yeah, true enough.
See, so where with radio communications, you could reach outside of the affected area and talk to someone, and they could pull that up and relay that information back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know when the tornadoes came through Rolling Fork and Amory, Mississippi
Last spring.
cell service was knocked out completely down there. All power was gone. Rolling Fork was just leveled. And the teams that went in there were using radios. That's the only way they had to communicate effectively to begin with, until the AT&T and Verizon and Sprint showed up about 3 or 4 days later with their portable towers.
And even the emergency personnel in town lost all of their radios. They were in the buildings where the tornadoes flattened them to the ground. So the people that came in with radios were sharing with them for information.
And the towers were gone. So they had no repeater. So everything was based on line of sight and simplex radio. And then radio relays were set up to get information out of the area on what they needed. And that was a lot of ham guys were doing that information.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's vital. It's one of the first things that people should actually think about, aside from their basic primal needs, which is water, food, and shelter, and those sort of things. But communication is one of those things that is used actually against people to make them to break somebody. That's why they put people in solitary confinement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're in an isolation cell, and you don't have the ability to communicate with anybody. That can make a person go crazy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so just put yourself in that position of, now you don't have your cell phone. Now you don't have something to contact somebody. What do you do? How are you gonna reach out to your family, your loved ones, your friends, and find that out? Cell phones are down, power's out. Where are you going to turn? So is the answer, in your opinion, going to be ham radio?
It's going to be radio of some form.
Mm-hmm.
Whether, like we said, whether it's CB to reach out a few miles, FRS to reach out to your family,
mm-hmm.
GMRS, which goes a little further, or ham radio to get outside of the affected area. And that's what we have done, is set up communications with other groups outside of us. Because as I explained to the guys over in Alabama, that, okay, we have to set up our team and your team. We have to communicate, because if I have a tornado here, you probably won't get as much of it. And I can hit you on the radio and say, hey, we're fine, but the tornado wiped out my storage shed where all my gasoline was stored, so I don't have gas for my generator.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get me some? And they'll bring it. So that's what we look at. That's the benefits of having the radios and communicating outside on a regular basis. You have to practice radio.
Yeah.
That's
it's one of those things, man. Like I do not drills, but we do like quarterly training, my wife and I.
Yeah.
Because it's more in my mind than it is hers. Right? It's something that I grew up with, being a firefighter, just being who I am. I'm very much somebody who's always thinking about what if. And that's not necessarily her mechanism for dealing with things. So we do have things that we've set up here for, maybe an eventuality of something happening bad. And we've got a plan for that. And we train quarterly on it. And it's not really a training thing. It's just to review it. It's just, hey, where's this? Where's that? What are we going to do if that happens? And it's just that level of remembrance, because if you train on something one time and then you think, oh, now I've got this certificate, look at me, I've got this, I can do CPR. Oh, can you? When somebody right in front of you, do you remember what you're supposed to do? So it's just one of those things that we need to practice, those things that are important to us. And again, communications is important. I've got an issue with my communications right now within my own group that I need to get resolved. And it's something that I'm going to be working on this week, because that's not okay. I shouldn't not be able to reach out in the way that I'm supposed to be. And so you just got to find out what's important to you, and don't just start acquiring gear with no like plan to keep proficient at it. Because when you actually need something, that's not the time to try to like figure it out again, you know, because maybe you're not going to be able to pull up that YouTube video and say, well, how do I do that?
Yep.
Right.
Well, that's like, we do a lot of portable radio. We go out to state parks and national parks, and it's called Parks on the Air. But when we're at the parks, we actually have to set up the radio and put an antenna up in order to operate. And I've made it part of my job. I do all the connections to the radio. I put it up while he puts the antenna up in the tree. I know how that radio operates. I know how to turn it on. I know how to turn it off. I know how to tune it. I know how to talk on it. We come back to the house. I don't talk on the radio here much at the house. And some days I'll go, tell me again how to turn this one on, because I don't practice.
Right.
But the one we use out in the field, I can operate.
Yeah. See, and that's one of the things. Radio is not plug and play. You have to do radio, and we do radio. We build antennas. We go out in the field. A lot of people that don't know ham radio have the misconception that you've got to have this big, huge tower with this massive antenna sitting outside your house, you know, and that's what you have to talk on it. That's not true. We talk all over the world on 60 feet of wire and a little balun or a transformer.
Connected to the radio.
Connected to the radio. We put this 62 foot of wire up into a tree at a sloped configuration, connected to this transformer, connected to the radio, and we've talked all over the world on a 100-watt radio. On a 100-watt radio.
On HF.
On HF.
Yeah.
Which does require a license, which takes some studying to get. It's not hard, but you do have to study for it.
Right. That's another level. That's pretty cool, man. So not all people are going to be that enthusiastic about, you know, hey, I want to go and get my general and my, you know, everything.
Extra,
yeah. You know, not everybody's going to be that enthusiastic. I have my technician class, and for me, that suits me for what I need within our group. And as we talked the other night, one of the nice things is we do have people within our ham group that have those extra capabilities, so that we can reach out to them and get information from them.
Right.
So I'm not going to necessarily reach out across state lines. I'm not going to, I'm not, or around the world, but we do have people who have that capability. So I think that's important. Would you like to speak on that?
I think it's important. Our daughter was not real interested in getting her license, but we did convince her to get her technician license. And she lives about 1.5 miles from us. And so she can talk to us on the radio when things are down. But she's like you, that's all I need, because I know Daddy's going to be talking and he's going to tell me what I need to know. So he's in the group that's going to get the information and then relay it to the others that don't have the ability to get that information.
And that's where your GMRS license comes into effect, and your GMRS radio. Okay. You have a group out there, you have a team that you communicate with. A lot of people, their group, their team is within 15 miles of each other. So if you have a good antenna and a good radio, you can cover that 15 miles on simplex without having to go through a repeater. So you can relay information to them, to your guy that has the ham license. He can relay information back to you. So not everyone has to have that general class ham license to get out.
Right.
As long as someone in the team has it, the information can get there. And if you have developed a communications plan within your team on how to reach out and have practiced to make sure that it works, then you're golden. You're good to go.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Other than natural disasters, which we've covered, are there any other special events that you, within your ham group, are prepared for or preparing for? Let me just say it that way.
We
Field day.
we do field day, which is a big training exercise, and field day is the that's in June, the last weekend in June, and then winter field day is another large training exercise in January, where hams all across the world get on there and start making contacts. A lot of the ham clubs, we don't have these events in our area so much. They will get out and help local law enforcement do 5K runs, the long bike runs. They will set up stations along there, usually where the water stations are. You will have a ham operator there that's relaying information, saying, hey, yeah, the last rider's through, we're shutting down. Or, hey, there was a massive wreck in the curve. Let's get the ambulance up here to get this taken care of. So it helps the local police force to not have to use as much of their resources for these type events. But you'll have a lot of the ham clubs that do that. Road rallies that are going on, the big car shows that are happening.
I think, what's that I'd like to point out is there's a race that I've actually run. I ran it in 2017, and it's the oldest 100-mile race in existence, really. And it's very prestigious. A lot of people try to get into it. But nonetheless, I've run it as a participant, and I've also worked as a volunteer at the aid station for many years. And that's at mile 37. And there's a lot of remote and areas where there is no cell coverage. You can't get out. And the local ham club coordinates we have one right at the aid station where I'm at Miller's Defeat at mile 37. And then there's ham stations, like you said, at all these different various checkpoints. And they are saying, hey, first runners come through, or, hey, we have an issue, because there is, like I said, there's no cell coverage. You'd be lucky to text from there. So it's a vital means of communication. I guess the question that I have is, it's something that is not able to be manipulated or restricted by nefarious actors. Let's put it that way. If somebody wanted to shut ham down, could they do that?
To a point. Back 2 years ago, when Cuba was having its little, I don't want to call it an uprising, when they were having their demonstrations and stuff down there, Cuba sent out jamming signals on the ham bands.
On the HF bands.
On the HF bands. Well, it takes a lot of power to jam a signal. So you can't jam the entire band. But what they were doing was jamming certain sections of it where their population talked the most. And we saw it up here because we could not use those particular frequencies within that band.
So it is possible.
Yeah, but you just go to another frequency.
I see.
That's part of that's within your PACE plan, that I'm going to talk to you on this frequency. Right. And if this frequency is not available, I know to go to this frequency.
Got it.
Okay. That's all part of the PACE plan, as well as time. You've got wilderness protocol type information out there where, okay, at 5 minutes before the hour and 10 minutes after the hour, I know somebody's going to be monitoring this frequency. And you set that up with your group.
Right. I got a question here from Dean Mullis, and I guess he's referring to something that maybe you guys can weigh in on, because I don't exactly know what that is. Meshtastic. You know what that is?
It's the mesh nets out there. Yes, I know what it is. And no, we haven't done anything with it. Right. I know there are some groups that are looking into it and doing more with it. We have not.
Right. So
Ah, okay. Yes. And
Yeah.
what
So,
he's what? Go ahead. You can explain.
No,
that
go
one.
ahead.
What Dean's referring to there is NVIS, near vertical incident skywave, for HF radio. And what that is, HF radio sends its signal up, it bounces off, it hits the ionosphere and bounces back down. A lot of the guys used to call that skip on CB radio.
mm-hmm.
Well, if you take your antenna and put it lower to the ground and run it in a horizontal configuration, you move that signal in within 300 miles. So with the proper antenna, I can use an HF radio and talk 40, 50 miles away. Where if my antenna is not configured properly, my signal will bounce up and skip over. That's like Arkansas, 200 miles away from me. With the antennas I have up, I cannot talk to people in Arkansas. My signal bounces right over the top of them because they are too close to me.
And
Yeah,
so
interesting.
if you're really wanting to talk to somebody on the other side in your same town, a lot of times your handheld radios, your GMRS or your 2-meter radios are going to get to them easier than an HF radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah. You don't need to go through all the ionosphere just to get somewhere that's not that far away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we have practiced with members of our group on that NVIS antenna, so we know what it takes to make it work.
Right.
Because I've actually talked 20 miles away to a guy on HF reliably. It takes practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Practice is definitely key to all of this.
Mhm.
Among the folks in the ham radio community, what are some of the more widely, I guess, accepted means by which you guys would protect your radio equipment from, let's say, an EMP?
Faraday cages. This
There it is.
mission darkness bags
Yeah.
are
And-
Faraday bag. They're a
and so what
Faraday
would you-
style
what would you-
bag.
What you're holding up is just a black bag, and it's apparently a Faraday bag,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
And
And then
so
they
do you,
have larger ones that you can put entire HF radio rigs in.
right? And so is
This
that
one
something
happens
that?
to be waterproof as well?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
And
Yeah,
we keep radios in those as
Okay.
well as in Faraday cages.
Right. Yeah. See,
And then-
that's one of those things that yeah, it's definitely a concern. It's definitely something that is a potential that could damage that electronic equipment. And I guess that's, from what I understand as well, from what I've kind of poked around a little bit, that's the information that I'm getting is Faraday cages and Faraday bags is pretty much what's
Right.
people are using for that. So do you cache specific, like, let's say you have some radios and you have them just in some radio equipment like that, just in a Faraday bag
Yes.
at all times?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
We have multiple radios.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to have multiple radios to operate, but somebody likes multiple radios.
Right. I know where you're going with that.
But we also use products by EMP Shield
Mm-hmm.
out there.
Yep.
EMP Shield makes a lightning arrestor that
Mhm.
goes in line with your antenna. And then they've also got an RV, what they call their RV setup. I have that plugged into my wall, and then my power supplies for my radios are plugged into that, because your HF radios run off of 12 volts. So you can run those off of a battery. And when we're in the field, that's what we use. We use the lithium iron phosphate batteries to run our radios. And so I have my power supply shielded through EMP Shield on that as well.
Yeah, that's super critical and super important. I put a link as for that as well, EMP Shield,
Yep.
in
Great.
the description of this. And
Yep.
obviously they make things for your home, they make things for your vehicles. And it's just a good insurance plan if you're considering what if. And it doesn't have to be a coronal mass ejection. It doesn't have to be an EMP that
No,
winds up affecting your
it can
equipment.
be,
It could
it
be
can
lightning.
be a lightning strike.
Yeah.
And it comes in the house and takes out every radio you have in the shack.
Yeah,
Every bit of it.
it's actually very common. Lightning is very common. EMPs aren't so common. Not to say that they couldn't happen, but lightning is very common. And the cool thing about EMP Shield, the thing that I like about it, and the thing that makes me glad about being an affiliate for that company, is the fact that if you have an issue where your stuff gets hit by lightning, you're going to be insured for up to $25,000 per unit that you have installed on your vehicle, your home, or otherwise.
Right.
And you don't have to go through the insurance company. You can go directly to EMP Shield and they will cut you a check. And I like being affiliated with businesses like that. So that's why I'm an affiliate with them. And there is a link in this particular broadcast or on our website that you can go on and get $50 off on any EMP Shield that you want to buy, for every EMP Shield that you buy. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's not something that I push a lot, but it's important.
I use their products, and we've tested their products. I bought them at one of the Self-Reliance Festival there in Camden. I met with Patrick and Robert, and I bought their products, and we came back and put them through the tests. They worked, and especially on the antenna side, I did not see any loss, any dB loss on that when I put it in line, which is a major thing. And there was no loss there. So that sold me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super good. Gee, it sounds like we're talking about some contingencies here tonight. This is weird, right? So another contingency I want to bring up is there's an organization that you enlightened me on the other night when we spoke, and I had not had any knowledge of this particular organization, and come to find out they're fairly new. I guess they were started in 2020 from what it says on the website. So maybe you can explain what is American Contingency and who might that group be best suited for?
American Contingency is a nationwide preparedness organization. The mission statement is to inform, equip, train, and connect Americans and teach to be self-reliant, resilient, and prepared for any contingency out there.
Right.
We're in all 50 states, several thousand members, and this is a face-to-face organization. This is not an internet group.
There are some online training opportunities with them, but all the groups in all the states do try to have times where you do get together and you meet face-to-face, so you know who you're talking to and who you're dealing with. And it's very family oriented. They want the husbands and wives, bring your children. It's a good group of people.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think the point that's really awesome about that is the fact that these people are not just on some kind of a Facebook group or whatever that have a passive interest in it. They seem like people are engaged in this particular community, and they're making, as you said, those face-to-face communications, that's really what it's all about. Because I've heard so many people say that, oh, I'm having a hard time, finding my tribe. I'm having a hard time finding people that are like-minded. Where do I go? And you have to put in the work, but it's also nice if there's places where you can go and find people that are there with the same intent. And when you can meet face to face and in person, that's even better, because now you can establish a relationship possibly amongst yourselves rather than being not only within the group, but you're doing things outside of that as well.
Oh
So
yeah. And the face-to-face meeting is encouraged because last weekend we had a team down in South Alabama that did a Stop the Bleed class for their members. They have a trained EMT paramedic, and he came in and taught the team a Stop the Bleed class. We have others that they'll run classes on freeze drying, on how to can, navigation, how to use a compass, how to navigate the woods out there. And then of course your basic skills of fire starting, and then basic first aid and everything is all taught. And we have subject matter experts that are involved with American Contingency that you could reach out on the website with, ask them a question, and you'll get an answer. I know when we were just starting freeze drying, there is a expert over in Texas, and I reached out to her, and she was fantastic.
We've learned a lot from her.
Yeah, on getting set up on how to do eggs and how to do green beans and things like that, not just candy like everybody else does.
Right.
Which is
awesome.
Is
what we did at first too, because it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but yeah, it's all there. And the subject matter experts on radio, which, I try to answer as many questions on radio as I can because I am the Southeast communications coordinator for American Contingency. I talk to 9 states over here in the South about radio and GMRS and CB and whatever they need.
Yeah. Let's say I'm interested in this group, but I'm really all about, I'm kind of a sketchy dude. Can I just come into that group and will you guys accept me in? Maybe I'm somebody who really likes some things that are kind of out there. Are you cool with that?
No,
what?
We're not. We are a vetted organization, meaning you're going to go through a background check before you have full access. Because I want to know that if my wife reaches out, if she's on the road and breaks down somewhere and she reaches out through one of our Zello channels and says, hey, I'm broke down on I-55 at this mile marker, I want to know the person that pulls up behind her has gone through a background check and he's not somebody that's going to do harm.
Yeah.
So yes, you're going to go through a background check for us as well. And then you'll be vetted by your team members as well. You may pass the background check, but if the team members get a bad vibe about you, you'll be gone. So we're pretty close because we're so family oriented.
Yeah.
How many
members in this organization in total?
Few thousand. I don't know the exact numbers, 8,000-9,000 or more. And we're in all 50 states. I'm not privy to the exact numbers.
Right.
But we are very active. We were founded by Mike Glover out of Fieldcraft Survival. He runs Fieldcraft Survival now. This started off as locals and then went from locals to American Contingency. Our current director is Tom Rigsby out of Huntsville, Alabama. Deputy director is Mike Lott out of South Alabama. And it's then we're broken up into different regions, making biochar sketchy.
That's me.
Yeah. That's you. I know.
Yeah.
So in each region has a regional coordinator, and then there's state coordinators, and then there's team leaders. So it's broken down pretty good. And we encourage the face-to-face.
Especially among your local team.
And then the regions get together and have regional meetings. And then the states have Alabama just ran what's called their Adventure Challenge. And they invited everybody that wanted to come to their Adventure Challenge. And you had 6 stations. And you had something to do at each station. One was a first aid station. You were given a scenario. Somebody had a bad injury on their leg. How are you going to stop the bleed? What have you got to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
One of them was basic fire starting with wet wood.
And then you had to cook on top of it.
Mm-hmm. And then land navigation. All right. You were given a set of coordinates that you had to find certain items out in the woods based on those coordinates. And then there was a radio challenge. And I ran the radio challenge portion of it. So you're learning the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, as I said to you guys the other day, when you were describing this to me, it sounded much like Boy Scouts for adults, really. It sounds very, very practical, very solutions based and community centric and wholesome, quite honestly. But I also pointed out that anytime you have large groups of people like this outside of traditional orthodoxy and you're doing things that are self-reliant, you're going to be looked upon in some ways by the people that don't want you to do that as being some kind of a threat. And I know that groups like this are looked at unfavorably by agencies because they think that, there's this push now that there's some kind of a problem with domestic terrorism. And I don't know. I don't see in any way that a group like this has any concerns with that, but I know that there's people out there that are going to be naysayers about, I don't want to be getting into a group for OPSEC. I don't want to be getting into a group for whatever reason, because there's probably going to be feds infiltrating the group or whatever. Right. What would you say to that?
Well, we're all on lists. And a lot of those same people are the ones that buy 1,000, 2,000 rounds of ammunition online with their credit card. Okay. That's going to flag you more than being an American contingency, because American contingency also gets very involved with the community. And that's very important to us, is to be involved with the community. And when we had the tornadoes that came through Mississippi, American contingency put relief supplies together out of our pockets, the members' pockets, and brought those supplies. Kentucky, when they had their flooding a while back, okay, we took supplies to the flood victims up there. We work with the churches. Yes, we have groups in North Louisiana.
Yes.
There you go, Cindy.
Yes, join and we will get you hooked up. Okay.
That is so cool, man. I mean, to be out there actually being actionable and doing things and bringing support to people, it just shows the level of commitment from your members in the organization. And what I would say to what you said, to dovetail onto that, that's a perfect example of, if somebody is being that person that's saying, I don't want to be affiliated with that, or it's this, or I have issues with regard to OPSEC, what are you hiding from? As you stated, you're already on a list. If you've spoken your mind, you're being listened to. We're all being listened to right now. Everything that you say is being tracked on your cell phone.
Every bit of it.
Yeah. So, I just put that out there as kind of like a devil's advocate type of an argument. I wanted to hear what you had to say about it.
I was talking to a team lead about that just last night, that I don't know about Eastern Washington, but I think if you will drop me an email, sbradios at protonmail.com. I think you've got a link in there for me.
Yeah, I'll put it in if I don't. I think I've got your link somehow.
Okay. We'll make sure you got it. And then that way they can, I'll respond to you.
Okay.
If we've got something in Eastern Washington. But I was addressing that to a member that's trying to do recruiting, and he's running into that. Well, I don't want to be on a list. I don't want to do this and this. And eventually it's like, well, what are you hiding?
Yeah.
We're all on a list. We carry a pocket tracker with us everywhere we go.
Mm-hmm.
And it does listen to you. I was talking with a friend of mine one day at lunch, and we were talking ham radio, and we were talking about vacuum tubes, which go in a lot of the old radios that we both have and utilize. And I told him, I said, oh, well, I said, something's going to show up on your phone before long advertising that. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. He called me a couple hours later. He had an advertisement for vacuum tubes show up on his radio. I mean, on his cell phone.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay. Yeah. And he had not done a search for it or nothing. So, and eventually you just say, okay, y'all do you. This is what we're going to do. We're going to train our people. We're going to interact with the community. We're going to be known. Law enforcement is going to know us because we're going to interact positively with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when something comes up, they're going to know that, hey, these are the good guys. Yeah. They're the ones that are going to come in here with the food to help the people. They're going to come in with the generators. They're going to come in with the radios and set up communications and help us relay information in and out of our area.
Right.
So we can connect with emergency management until they can get here and take over. That's what we're going to do. That's what American Contingency is about.
Yeah, that's great. And, I'm sure your group's already doing that now, but to be your own advocate in that regard, let people know what you're doing, not for the reasons you're not doing it for the reasons of getting the accolades or the glorification, but you want people to know that, hey, we're in your community. We're trying to help your community. We're not looking for really anything in return. We just want to be acknowledged that we're here, and it's okay that we're here, because when that story does come out about, you're some kind of a group that needs to be on some kind of a scared list, a watch list, people are going to know differently. And I think it's important to be your own advocate as it relates to marketing and media. And I'm sure you probably are well aware of that.
Yeah, we do to a point, but most of what we do, like you said, we don't do it for the accolades.
No,
we do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So we roll in, we do that. We work with the local churches. Like when we went to Amory and took supplies down there, we took food, but we took soap and razors and toothbrushes and toothpaste, the basic hygiene things that people need that gets overlooked by a lot of these organizations. We contacted one of the local churches down there and said, hey, we've got a trailer load of supplies. And they said, yes, we're the distribution point. Bring it to us. So we like to work locally. We don't like to work through the Red Cross or the Salvation Army. We would rather work with the local churches and the local groups, because then we know that what the supplies that we bring in are going to stay in that area.
Yeah. That's you couldn't be
important.
Yeah. You guys are right on target there, local assistance, and you're going to be able to get that stuff to them a lot quicker than FEMA coming in, setting up all their trailers and getting all their people in there and all this other stuff, which is, it's a bloated bureaucracy that just doesn't serve the people very well. And I think that's really awesome. And to anybody listening to this, I would just encourage you maybe to go on and look at their website, see what it looks like. And if it's something that you're interested in, possibly reach out. You can reach out. To the website.
If you got questions, doesn't matter what part of the country you're in. If you have a question about American Contingency, please reach out to us, Susan and I.
Yep.
And we will be glad to answer your questions, and then possibly get you in touch with somebody locally there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yep. Local infrastructure. That's the way to go.
Exactly. And what we've encouraged some of our teams, especially here in the South, to do is go to the dollar store, get shampoo, toothbrush, toothpaste, a washcloth, and a hairbrush, and put it in a 1-gallon Ziploc bag. Make up a bunch of those throughout the year. You can do it for like $7 or $8 a bag. So when we have these disasters, we can roll in and distribute those right away. You know, it's got a bar soap in it, you know, or a body wash or something like that. Things that people are going to need right away. Because I don't know about you. I mean, you go a couple of days without brushing your teeth, it's getting really bad out there. You know, because everybody ships water in. That's the first thing that they told us when we were talking to church. You're not bringing water, are you? Say, no, we're not. Say, good. Because, I mean, they had pallets and pallets of water down there. And so they have that, but they don't get the hygiene supplies. So that was one of the things that we noticed. And so we're encouraging our teams, you know, put those little baggies together. They don't cost much. And then you can roll in and hand out 30 or 40 of them as you just drive down the road. Just say, here, and just hand them out to people. Right.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love to hear that. And I'm glad you pointed that group out to me, because I was unaware. I'm not looking for a group in specific. And, you know, obviously you guys aren't out there promoting yourself. So it stands to reason that I've never heard of the group. But when I decided to look on their website, and then after talking to you, it just sounds like, wow, what a fantastic thing that's happening. And it's only going to probably get bigger and better. And, you know, more people come on board that are valuable assets. I think it's a really good thing that we can all kind of pull together in that way, you know?
Oh yeah. We've got ex-law enforcement, current law enforcement, current military, ex-military, you know, everybody. We've even got people out there that are subject matter experts in homeschooling. Homeschooling's becoming very big now.
In our area.
In our area anyway. And, you know, we've got people out there that we can reach out to and say, hey, you know, tell us about the homeschooling programs that you like and that you're using. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good informational group, as well as something that it gives you peace of mind to know that you have a team out there to rely on if something comes up. Or if you just need help, hey, I got to string some fence today. Any of y'all come help me string some fence for my cows? And they'll show up.
Yeah. Dean Mullis says, what's sad is the general population does not just go to the Dollar General and spend $10 for the same supplies before disaster strikes. Yeah, I think that's true, Dean. But the thing is it's like, that's humanity. When you have things provided to you and they're readily available, it's a lot easier to not really consider those things. But it goes back to what Brian was saying earlier about, you know, is it something that's probable, or is it, you know, a remote possibility? And for many people, that's kind of a remote possibility. But if you live in an area that's prone to certain disasters, maybe you should think about caching some of these things, or maybe you should think about maybe upping your communication game, because chances are you're going to have within the next 1 to 3 years a disaster roll through your area. It's pretty common in a lot of these states. So
especially us right now with the tornado situation. And like I say, the people in Rolling Fork lost everything. That town was just leveled. You can go on YouTube and look at the video footage of that. As a matter of fact, that happened the weekend. That was March.
It was in March.
That was in March, because we were up at the Self-Reliance Festival in Camden, and Bear Independent was up there, and he left. He gathered his group, and they rolled into Rolling Fork.
And went to work.
Yeah, I remember that. I was there as well.
Yeah. Because those people had nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, that little baggie of stuff would have been a godsend to them.
Yeah. Hilltop Blue says, I'm concerned one day when we dial 911, no one will answer.
That's where your radio communications would come into effect. So if you needed something, you call your tribe, you call your team, you call your family through the radio.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because,
think
911 is not always going to be there.
no. And, even if it is there, you're going to be, in some cases, put in queue depending on what's happening. If there's
Right.
multiple incidents that are running, you're going to be sorted in order of priority. And
If you can get through and the cell towers aren't overloaded
sure.
and you get the fast busy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we really depend a lot on the emergency services, and they're great when they're able to come and assist and all that sort of stuff. But you can't look to others to provide the things that that is probably in your best interest to prepare for. And that's what we talk a lot about in this community, and people of our mind thinks about. Whereas the average person, the general population, they still kind of just rely on others. And again, that's just, I think, human nature. But it's great you guys are doing what you're doing. I noticed you got Homestead in your name, SB Homestead Radios. So what's the impetus for the Homestead? How does that incorporate into what you guys do?
Go ahead. We are just here to provide communication preparedness for the family homestead, not just us, but anyone that would like to know more, especially on the communication side. That's where we're the heaviest. Now, if we need some help with gardening, sometimes my garden works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm going to have to go for some help. I would like to do more than we do, but we have both been working full-time jobs, but we're slowly heading more into that retirement side and homesteading and becoming more self-sufficient ourselves. So we are still learning every day.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. I think, we're all learning to whatever extent, where we are in our journey. Nobody is a pro at homesteading, even though some people may think they are. It's different from year to year. You learn every year. And if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. That's just the reality of
that's right.
Yeah.
Living on a farm. Right. So, I don't know.
We do the gardening, we have horses. Our daughter's got goats. We raise bees. We have fruit trees. We've got the lakes behind the house that are stocked.
We got chickens.
We have chickens. So, are we the big homestead totally self-sufficient? No, but we're trying to get that way.
Yeah. I think that there's very few people that actually are that. There's folks that are out there that are off the grid, and they're, doing a lot of the stuff that, a lot less, dependence upon the system or outside resources. But most people that are homesteading, I mean, nobody's doing this stuff independent of the system. We're all attached to it. So it's nothing that, any of us need to feel like we need to be at a certain level to homestead. Homesteading is something that, we all make it for ourselves. So, yeah, that's awesome what you guys are doing. Do you think that there's more of a willingness to cross-pollinate in recent years, Brian and Susan? Do you think that homesteading and ham radio, the communities, do you think they've been willing to be more integrated, realizing the need to do both?
Yes,
I do.
Yeah.
A lot of people that we've talked to just in the last couple of years, and a lot of them that are homesteaders and are doing more of that, they're very interested in the communication component of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of your homesteads now are further out into, I don't want to say wilderness, but further out off grid. So their cell phones don't work as well out there. So they are finding out that radio communications is an easy way to communicate between the families and between the homesteads.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty awesome.
Because a lot of the guys that we know, they're all riding with radios in their trucks.
Yeah.
So they stay in contact with each other, and it's monitored. You've got the national calling frequency out there that is monitored by someone all the time. I mean, I know it's in my radio, and it scans on my 2-meter radio. And if somebody comes through town is looking, they may need a tire fix. They may want to know where a good place to go eat is. And we'll respond and send them, okay, where's a good Mexican restaurant? Okay, go here. You want steak? Go here. Catfish? Go here. And that's kind of what radio does.
Yeah, right on. That's awesome. I understand that you will be making an appearance back in Kentucky in March. You'll be putting on a paid class, and maybe you can explain a little bit more about what that class entails and what people could expect if they signed up for it.
It is going to be a class. It's going to be the Friday before the festival on Saturday and Sunday. That happens to be March 22nd. And we'll do an online component of the class before it starts. And then the day of the class, it's geared towards getting your technician license. And we will help you study. We will provide you with some study materials. We'll do a review session that day. We'll take our test that same day. But then we're also going to do, for the afternoon portion of the workshop, we're going to do some hands-on with radios. The 2-meter radios, the GMRS radios, how to make them work, what do they do, how do I use it, how do I know what channel I'm on, just the very basics to get comfortable with it. We will be offering a test session there for those that enrolled in the class, but if there's anyone else that wants to come test for their license and has not taken the class, they're welcome to test with us, especially if you're wanting to upgrade from one license to another. We will be testing that morning also. Wouldn't have missed.
That's it.
Yeah, that sounds good. So it's good for people who are entry level and just
entry level.
Yeah. Yes. It's designed for that. And when you sign up, we will send you the test materials, the study materials. So sign up early, so you'll have plenty of time to review the materials. You'll have our email address. Email us questions. I'll give you my phone number. You can call me on the phone. And then we will do a video question and answer session, probably that Tuesday or Wednesday before the test session. And it'll go for however long it needs to. So we'll answer questions, help you study. If you hung up on something, we'll get it figured out. And then, like she said, that Friday morning, we'll do what's called a ham cram. We'll run through everything that Friday morning, and hopefully you'll be prepared for your test and you'll all pass.
Yeah, I've created a link to Kentucky Sustainable Living's website. It's going to be in the description of this broadcast. And you can go on there. They've got the dates explicitly on there. You can sign up there. And then again, if you have any questions regarding that, you can reach out to Susan and Brian, and they'd be glad to walk you through that. But that's going to be in March. The dates escapes me, but you mentioned it already. And
23 and 24.
The Saturday, Sunday is March 23rd and 24th. The radio workshop will be March 22nd on Friday.
Right. Yeah, that I was down there for the first go around back in October in Kentucky, Bowling Green, and they put on a really good workshop. I would encourage anybody who's thinking of going to a workshop this year, maybe give that one a look and maybe go down there and try to make some connections with people, because as we've been talking about this entire broadcasts, planning, communications, and networking, that's one of the ways that you can advance your communications, because I can pick up my phone and I can text and I can talk to Brian. I can talk to Jason down in Kentucky. I can talk to a lot of people that I've met and made contacts with and get that sort of information. So going back to what you had said, Brian, on the PACE plan, right? Primary. So pick up the phone. If I can't do that, what I can do? Maybe I can text them. But it's just good to have the ability to reach out and to establish relationships with people so that you can get valid information, because, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but sometimes sometimes the information that flows from the media, the established media, doesn't always leave me feeling like I've been given accurate information, because you've got, diametrically opposed views coming from one side or the other. It's just like news, but it's political. And I don't know. I'd like to get actually some information and communicate with people in person, like we talked about with American Contingency, right?
Yes.
That's it. That's it. We're also January the 20th. We're going to be in Provo, Utah at Fieldcraft Survival.
Okay.
And that is Preparedness Communications Conference up there. And for more information on that, go to Fieldcraft Survival's website, fieldcraftsurvival.com.
So are you going to be making any other appearances elsewhere coming up this year other than those two appearances, or?
That's all we have currently scheduled.
Okay.
We've got some other venues we're looking at. It just depends on how things work out with my work and her work.
Right.
But that's the two that we have booked for sure right now.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that your class is going to be good. I think that the festival that you're going to be attending down there is going to be good. Were you guys? Oh yeah, you were there.
We were there.
Oh yeah, we were there.
We met there.
Yeah. We're really looking forward to the Kentucky Sustainable Living one. We had fun when we were there last time.
Yeah.
And we're even looking forward to more this time. I think the crowds are going to be a lot bigger. The weather's going to cooperate, I hope.
Yeah.
And we had fun.
Met a lot of good people.
And had a lot of time to talk to people just one-on-one.
You bet. The good thing about that venue is the fact that it is indoors. It's in that big expo arena.
Yes.
And so we actually had rain there Saturday and Sunday. I mean, it flat got with it for a minute, but it really wasn't an issue because we weren't underneath tents and we weren't outside and all of that sort of thing. I was going to tell Jason, I think the only thing that would make that a better venue is if they could somehow convince the Ag Expo to put in like a sky dome. So that when it's sunny, they could open it up, right? And
that would be great.
Sun in there. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would.
That would be great.
It was a good venue being inside like that. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely got a lot of potential to continue to grow, and they did a really good job with it. So kudos and hats off to them. Yeah, I've enjoyed our conversation tonight, guys. Is there anything that you want to leave folks with? Final words of encouragement or any parting thoughts you'd like to leave folks with?
Radio communications, if you don't overthink it, is not really hard. Just look at it, break it down into its simple components, and get started in it. Do something. Get a GMRS radio, get an FRS radio, practice with it, and then go from there. And if y'all have questions, let us know. We'll be glad to help you. If it's simple questions, we'll answer them right away. If you need team training or something like that, we can arrange that as well, because we do a lot of consulting for people. That's pretty much what we do. And on the radio side, we consult with teams and individuals and help get them going in the right direction and provide the support, because we had a radio, an HF radio, for 2 years before we got a license.
Yeah.
Because we could not find the help we needed to get licensed. So that's why we started S&B Homestead Radios once we got proficient and felt comfortable in doing it. So we're wanting to help people get licensed that feel they have the need for it.
Or just want to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's fun. We enjoy getting out in the parks and doing radio in the parks, and we'll do it as a group. There'll be 3 or 4 of us out there set up and going. And Winter Field Day coming up. If you're interested in ham radio, that's the last weekend in January. Find a ham club, go to ARRL.org and you can find a local affiliated club. ARRL is the, I don't want to say governing body, but they are
The head organizers.
head organizers for ham radio in the country. And go sit with some of those guys out there. And it's fun. We don't, it's a contest, but our group doesn't treat it as a contest. We will probably have somewhere between 20 and 30 people show up out of our group. And we'll sit around, we'll talk on the radio, we'll have a lot of good food, and we'll have fun.
And we take a lot of times our newest ham radio operators that may not have radios at home, or they have not actually talked on the radio, and teach them how during field day. It's just an opportunity to share our love of radio with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight. And, I've enjoyed having the opportunity to further the conversation. I think it's really important that we talk about these things, and we talk about them so that maybe people will be inspired to go out and to do something for themselves in that regard. If they haven't maybe thought about some of these redundancies and some of these contingencies that, we all can hone our skills on, we can all be better in these areas. So, I want to thank everybody for joining in tonight.
Thanks.
That was in the chat. That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And, remember, you guys can catch this broadcast, the live stream that we just did tonight, catch the audio version on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google, and what else? Yeah, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Google. And remember that homesteading is not harmful content. Go out tomorrow and try to be better than you were today. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.